Welcome to the Potter training video on Central Station reporting. The Dialer tab allows the user to program the applicable DACT for panel communication. Selecting the Add Dialer button will add several fields that correspond to the specific dialer information required. The device name field defaults to Dialer 1, the device ID defaults to 1. The device ID must match the physical address on the dialer. The UD2000 comes factory set to address 1, and this field must remain set to 1 when using it. The UD1000, however, has a configurable address. There are 3 fields at the top that contain the settings for phone line 1, phone line 2, and reporting method priority. The fields for phone line 1 and phone line 2 contain 3 checkboxes: Enabled, Enable Line Monitor, and Disable Dial Tone Detection. The Enabled checkbox is on and determines if the system will use the corresponding phone line to communicate. The Enable Line Monitor checkbox will cause the panel to monitor the corresponding phone line for on-hook voltage, which is 15 volts plus or minus 5 volts. These options are on by default for both line 1 and line 2. The line prefix field must be filled out with any numbers or characters required to access the phone line for outside calls, such as PABX systems that require the system to dial 9 prior to the number to call out. Reporting method priority options include primary and secondary, and simply determines if the DACT is the first path of communication or the second. Below these fields is a space for adding reporting accounts. No account is added by default. Selecting Add Account will populate the Reporting Accounts field with a row of options for account setup. Report Alarm, Report Trouble, and Report Supervisory checkboxes, when selected, tell the panel to report those types of troubles to that specific central station and account. The Report by drop-down has options for point-style reporting, zone-style reporting, and panel-style reporting. This determines the type of information to send to the monitoring station. The default is point. If reporting by zone, the event code corresponding to the style of zone will be sent to the central station. If the point and alarm is in multiple zones, all of those zones will report. The primary and secondary account ID fields are to be filled with the relevant account number for the monitoring station. The primary and secondary phone number fields are to be filled with the correct receiver numbers for the customer's monitoring station. The primary and secondary reporting format drop-downs have options for CID, CIA, and CIA Limited. The default option is CID. CIA Limited restricts batch sizes to 20 signals to prevent cellular communicators from dropping signals due to limited memory. The primary and secondary report test events checkbox determines if the specified receiver and account will perform an auto test. The IP Reporting tab contains all the necessary fields required to be filled out in order to program the system for off-site reporting through an Intellicom or IP dialer. Selecting the Add Intellicom button will generate a field for the Intellicom dialer settings. The Intellicom communicator account information is programmed separately, so this field only has options for how the system reports through the Intellicom, report alarms, report troubles, report supervisory, report test events, report by, primary format, and optional configuration backup password. Report alarms, report troubles, report supervisory, and report test events checkboxes correspond to the signals that will be reported by the Intellicom system. The Report by dropdown has options for point reporting, zone reporting, and panel reporting. This dropbox determines the amount of information that is reported to the central monitoring station. When reporting by zone, a device will report each zone it is assigned to. The primary format dropdown has options for CID and CIA. This determines the format of reporting. The optional configuration backup password can be added to enable password-protected IntelliView backups. Selecting the Add IP Dialer button will generate a field for the built-in IP dialer account information. The reporting method priority allows the user to determine if the IP dialer is used as the primary or the secondary reporting method. The IP Dialer Account section has settings for how the IP dialer reports, report alarms, report troubles, report supervisory, report by, and sections for primary account settings and secondary account settings. Report alarms, report troubles, and report supervisory checkboxes correspond to the signals that will be reported by the IP dialer. The Report by dropdown has options for point reporting, zone reporting, and panel reporting. This drop box determines the amount of information that is reported to the central monitoring station. Primary account settings and secondary account settings have the same options available to both and correspond to its respective account. The account ID field is required if the UDP port is set. The account number is determined by the monitoring company. The DNIS field is for the DNIS number, which will be provided by the monitoring station when required. The format dropdown determines the communication type and supports either CID or SIA formats. The Report Test Events checkbox, when selected, sends auto-test timers to the monitoring station on the respective account. The receiver IP address is required for IP reporting. This is the IP address the central monitoring station uses to receive signals from IP reporting. The UDP port is a port that system uses to send data packets over a network. This will be provided by the central monitoring station. The supervision interval timer is how long the system allows the automated check-ins to fail before generating a COM trouble at the panel and at the central station. Every 20 seconds, the panel sends a message to the receiver, and the receiver responds. If this process is interrupted for the programmed amount of time, the panel and central station will generate COM troubles. The default time is 90 seconds. The encryption method dropdown has options for none, or 128-bit if encryption is required. The encryption key provides protection to the information being sent over the network and allows the central monitoring station to decrypt the incoming information correctly. This will be provided by the monitoring station. The FCB1000 is a network Ethernet connection module used solely for central station reporting. Selecting Add Device generates a row with a custom name and address field. The address can be set from 1 to 31. Beside this row is a plus sign that opens an IP settings field. In this field, there are 4 base options for configuration: use DHCP, use static IP, use DNS address, from DHCP server, specify DNS address. The default selection is use DHCP. This setting tells the panel to obtain the IP address from the network once a connection is established. Selecting the user configured alternate IP allows the panel to switch to a manually configured IP address if the automatic IP address fails. Selecting static IP blocks the panel from obtaining the IP address automatically from the server and instead requires the user to specify the IP address, the subnet mask, and the default gateway. The default selection for DNS is to use the DNS address from the DHCP server. Selecting Specify DNS address instead requires the user to manually enter the preferred DNS server address and alternate DNS server address. Once the FCB1000 has been added, a new dropdown appears under the IP Reporting tab. This dropdown determines which path the panel will use to communicate. Only one FCB1000 can be added to a system. The MC1000 is a multi-connect expander module that supports 2 client panels to 1 host and allows up to 63 fire alarm control panels to report to the central station via a single reporting panel. At the top are 2 options for determining if this panel will be the host or client system. Selecting Add Device will generate a row with a custom name field, address field, and several options pertaining to the MC1000 settings. Client 1 in Use checkbox determines if a client panel is connected to client input 1. Display on Host checkbox determines if the system events display on the host panel. The client panel name field is a custom field for naming client 1. Client panel ID is used for reporting purposes. These options also apply to client 2. For more information on how the MC1000 reports to the central station, please refer to the reporting codes document available on the product page of any addressable fire alarm control panel. For more information about Potter products, please visit our website at pottersignal.com. To access additional training resources, check out our online training portal at academy.pottersignal.com. Stay connected with us on social media for the latest updates and news.